Psychological Alchemy Part 2, The Second Conscious Shock. This is the second of a series of videos describing my understanding of the work of George Gurdjieff and other influential thinkers and writers. The first video focused on Gurdjieff's concept of non-identification and the first conscious shock. This sequel is about Gurdjieff's concept of the second conscious shock. A large part of our subjective inner experience is either an impulse or drive to do something, or just the opposite in the form of not wanting to do a certain thing, or just wanting to be generally passive and inert. For example, if really famished, I feel a pressure to eat a lot of food really fast. The impulse is strong, like a 70-mile-per-hour wind blowing me along that course, or an antagonist pushing me along a path against my will. On the other hand, in other circumstances, I may not feel like making any effort whatsoever, and I yield to inertia by remaining lazy and vegetative in front of the TV, as if weighed down by a heavy anchor of lethargy. In this latter case, I become a prisoner of passivity. These inclinations and disinclinations can be imagined as high probability pathways. If acted upon unconsciously and unopposed, they draw force from us, like a bicycle losing its kinetic energy as it coasts downhill from higher to lower ground. If consciously opposed, that same energy that would have been dissipated is transubstantiated as a force for being, like a cyclist pedaling uphill on a slope and storing his higher position as potential kinetic energy. By observing our inner phenomenology, you can actually sense the gain or loss of force that follows from such acts. To gain force, we must oppose the forces in our lives. Put another way, we must promote inner battles between yes and no, and shine as much light, awareness, on the struggle as we can muster as this occurs. So how does this work in practice? First, we feel the wind of influence pressuring us to move or act in a certain way, or to say something with a certain tone of voice, or to not do or say something, and identify it as the high probability pathway of the moment. It helps to make our realization of the influence explicit by labeling it with a word or catchphrase. For example, this is called low blood sugar, or this is called caring what they think about me, etc. With that awareness, the next step is to precisely define a concrete, measurable, relevant aim that is directed against the impulse, such as, I shall not take another bite for a full 5 minutes, and then start a stopwatch to measure success or failure. A struggle between yes and no ensues. Awareness of one's movements and behavior must be exerted to make sure one does not wolf down a mouthful of food before the 5 minutes has elapsed. After 5 minutes, a bite of food is allowed, and the cycle may begin again. To not yield to the automatically arising impulse to do something is called control. To do something that you don't want to do, or when you want to do nothing, is called discipline. Forbearance is how long you can exert control or discipline, and timing is when you choose to stop the effort and relax. These 4 characteristics, control, discipline, forbearance, and timing, from Carlos Castaneda, are the traits of warriors who would wage the battle between yes and no. Indulging, on the other hand, is weakness or compliance in gratifying wishes or desires which have no claim to fulfillment and which ought to be kept under control. The elements of acute awareness, combined with trying to hit a target, achieve the aim, under conditions of extreme resistance, pain, discomfort, fatigue, produces a substance or energy or result that is normally not produced. If such efforts are made, entropy is reversed, and the energy is stored. On the other hand, if indulging occurs, energy is lost, and one feels a loss of force. When the vectors of awareness, intention, and resistance collide, the heat that is generated by impact fuels the transformation of substances and energies into higher substances and energies. Please note that this interaction cannot take place without the resistance, so be grateful for the opportunity when it makes its ugly appearance, as it inevitably does in the course of active living. As Shakespeare said in Macbeth, "Fair is foul, and foul is fair." Every form of resistance contains within itself the potential to be flipped and utilized as a vehicle to generate inner being or personal power, the power to maintain one's awareness, understanding, intention, and identity in the face of resistance. The consciousness of an ordinary man is like a feeble candle flame, easily snuffed out by the wind of adversity. The consciousness of a warrior, which has been grown strong after being exercised and tested by thousands of daily battles, is more like a blowtorch, which can maintain its flame even in the face of the winds of a hurricane. When the wind blows, the warrior rejoices in the opportunity to take it as a challenge to test his mettle and generate higher substances and energies. The amount stored quantifies the amount of personal power, a term frequently used by Carlos Castaneda. Only a human has the neurological equipment to do this. A dog or animal cannot. Yet how many people do you know that exercise this capacity to live up to such potential? This is such an important point that it bears reiteration. To accumulate personal power, the warrior seeks conditions akin to trying to hit a mark in the face of a metaphorical hurricane of resistance. It requires awareness of intent, the target, awareness of the environment and what the body is doing for necessary feedback, and the will to make the specific movements required to focus upon and hit the target, and to sustain all that for a certain period of time, for example, 5 minutes, in the face of severely adverse conditions, such as hunger, low blood sugar, pain, fatigue, etc. The awareness and control or will required to hit the mark in the face of resistance is the recipe to generate this special energy. Generate enough of it, and it will transform your life. Lose enough of it, and it will also transform your life, although not in a desirable way. Don't let opportunities to create this energy or substance slip through your fingers. The famous Chinese character Wei Jie comes to mind, with its double meaning of crisis versus opportunity. Let us end this video by consolidating what we have learned into a few actionable steps. First, sense. Lift your finger to the wind to assess its direction at the moment. In other words, try to discern the high probability pathway, which is the line of least resistance in your thinking, feeling, moving, and acting. Second, aim. Deliberately and consciously aim your metaphorical spear or your bow and arrow against the wind in some way, and state your intention for the record in simple and concrete terms. Third, strike. Throw that spear, shoot that arrow, take your best shot. Fourth, evaluate. Watch the wake of your boat as it sails through the water, and use that feedback to adjust both its current course and your aim for the next cycle. Take these 4 steps with as much intensity of awareness as possible. That means awareness of your thoughts, feelings, sensations, posture, facial expression, movements, and muscle tension. Each ingredient in this recipe is vital to practice psychological alchemy and transform metaphorical lead into gold. Resistance in the form of no must be present so that there is something to push against with your intention in the form of yes. Intense awareness of this dynamic is the catalyst which, together with the other two forces of yes and no, brings about transformation. Obviously, this requires tremendous effort. Simultaneously pushing against the force of no and fighting to maintain intense awareness of the interaction between yes and no is a really big effort on two fronts. The three forces colliding together produce metaphorical heat and light from the impact. Their repeated and sustained collision can transubstantiate the raw ingredients of life into something sublime, reverse entropy, and fulfill our destiny and potential as human beings. But here's a disclaimer. Please don't abuse this practice or take it to an extreme that would result in any form of harm to the mind or body. The porridge you make should not be too hot nor too cold, but just right in temperature. Don't get burned. Be smart. Don't injure the very vehicle that you need to arrive at your destination. And remember to always enjoy the ride. That was such a long summary that we will end this video by summarizing the summary in one succinct phrase. The obstacle is the way.